Story 1. I was kind of poor growing up. My parents couldn't afford to buy me Pokemon cards except for one starter set. When I was in 5th grade, I told a person who kept bragging about their cards and saying I didn't have any that I had a first edition holographic Japanese Raichu Pokemon card. By lunchtime, somehow everyone in the school, at least 3 different grades, kept asking me to bring it. The thing is, not only did I not have this card, but this card doesn't exist. I kept up the story for a few weeks until it died down. Kinda makes you miss the age without the internet in your hands. Story 2. One time, I made the pre-packaged Toll House chocolate chip cookies for my boyfriend, planning to tell him that they were store-bought. You just have to throw them in the oven. His roommate started joking and saying they were way too good to have been homemade. Instead of agreeing and saying they were not homemade, I got defensive and said they were. It has been years. I live with my boyfriend, and sometimes he still asks for my homemade cookies. Story 3. Thanks for the cow. I love it. Maybe I'll start a plushie zoo. That was to an earnest friend who was clearly insecure and trying to give a sweet birthday present despite not having money. I did not care one way or another about a bovine soft toy, but I wanted to be kind, and I appreciated the thought. Anyway, 20 years later, the entire top shelf of my closet is full of soft toys. There are a few here and there as decoration in every room of the house, and there is one large cow at the top of a mezzanine. Half of them are gifts, but I have to admit I was taken into the spiral myself after a few years. Story 4. A few years ago, I was invited on a boat dive with some friends, but honestly, I was feeling lazy. Early morning, long boat ride, gear schlepping. I just wasn't in the mood. Instead of saying, "No, I'm tired," I panicked and told them I had to help with a water quality survey at the marina that morning. Totally harmless, right? Just a little white lie to get me off the hook. Well, a week later, one of those friends was talking with someone from a local conservation group. They said, "Oh, Sharkhattab has been doing water testing at the marina." The other person replied, "Wait, really? We've been looking for volunteers. Can you connect us?" Suddenly, I was copied on an email about helping collect salinity and turbidity data. I figured no big deal, I would skip it. But my friend was so excited that they volunteered to come with me to learn what I do. Never mind that I only do underwater photography with these same people and didn't want to look foolish. So I scrambled. I showed up at the marina at 8 a.m. with a pool test kit I found in my garage, an old water bottle and a clipboard. I crouched at the dock, dipping strips into the water and pretending to write things down when my friend arrived with coffee. They were impressed. Then, as if the universe had a sense of humor, a marina staff member stopped by and asked if I was from the county. I stammered that I was just helping out. He squinted and said, "Good. We had complaints that you guys tested at low tide last time and gave us a yellow safety rating instead of green." My friend's eyes went wide, like I was some kind of expert. The lie snowballed. For about a month, I became the marina water guy. It's not like I wasn't back at that marina almost every weekend. Friends asked for updates. I started looking up terms like turbidity and Carenia brevis monitoring just to have things to say. At one point, someone introduced me at a scuba club meeting as the guy who checks if the marina is safe to swim in. Eventually, it collapsed when an actual survey volunteer recognized me at that scuba club meeting and asked which lab I was sending my samples to. I had to admit I'd just been using a pool kit. Let's just say I haven't lived that down with those friends. In short, just say you don't want to wake up early. Don't invent a career as a fake scientist. Story 5. I was a +1 at a birthday party for a guy named David. I met a gorgeous girl who turned out to be his sister. She asked me how I knew him. How do I know him? David is my best friend. David was not actually my best friend. I knew nothing about David, and he knew nothing about me. But his sister was very attractive, so David and I were going to get to know each other well. I befriended David and pushed myself to attend as many social events with him as I could. We became close friends. Eventually, he started showing interest in me. It turned out David was gay, and his family thought we were attracted to each other because of how much time I made an effort to spend with him. Story 6. When I was 8, a friend of mine got giardia from a creek behind her house. She liked to pretend to be a deer and was repeatedly told not to drink from the creek while imitating a deer, but she did. Her parents were teachers at the small boarding high school I eventually attended, which provided on-campus housing for their staff's families. Because she adamantly denied drinking from the creek, the school overhauled their water system out of fear of contamination and spent thousands of dollars because of her lie. Story 7. Not a lie I told, but I got sucked into the spiral. When I was 20, I moved states and was renting a room for my ex's parents. He didn't live there, and we had stayed friends for a couple of months since I was new to town. He was dating a girl who said she was pregnant and planned to keep the baby. Weeks went by, no prenatal care, nothing. So I told my ex's mom, who was a nurse, because I was genuinely worried about the pregnant teen's health. That night, I woke up with my ex standing over me in the dark holding a large knife. He threatened me for telling his mom. I called the police for the threat at knife point. They made a police report. He lost his job with the Transportation Security Administration. His parents kicked me out. You know, he wouldn't have actually hurt you. Why did you have to involve the police? I lived in my car and couch surfed for a couple of weeks until I found a new place. There never was a baby. Story 8. When I was in school, I told one of my friends as a joke that another friend only grew hair on his penis. Someone overheard this, and my friend ended up having the nickname Cattail. Story 9. What is a potato? Edit, link for the uninitiated. Story 10. While getting a full-body exfoliation and massage at a spa on a cruise ship, the attendant looked at the stretch marks on my stomach, wrinkled her nose, and asked, "How many children do you have?" I could tell by her expression that, although one was the true answer, it was not the correct answer at that moment. I lied and said 2. She then proceeded to ask increasingly detailed questions about my 2 children for the next hour. I foolishly kept inventing stories about these children, one of whom did not exist. Inside my head, I was screaming, "You fool! Will you just stop? I'm lying to you to hide the fact that my body is damaged for no good reason." Needless to say, the spa treatment was the opposite of relaxing, and I was exhausted from trying to keep all my lies straight the entire time. Story 11. I lied about having many siblings when I was volunteering at the library during the summer with other teenagers to help with the summer reading program. I told wild, made-up stories to the other volunteers. I think I liked the attention I got from these crazy stories about my imagined siblings. One day, my mom came to pick me up at the end of the day, and another teen volunteer led my mom over to me while I was putting books on the shelf. I immediately panicked, thinking, why did I lie about having a big family and wild siblings? If they talked to my mom, they would discover my lies, and I wouldn't know how to answer when asked why I lied. I was so stupid. I stopped talking about my made-up siblings and their crazy antics. Occasionally, I got asked about a specific character or sibling I made up, and instead of admitting my lies, I just say, "Oh, he's been pretty chill since he got in trouble for something," then change the subject. I am friends on Facebook with a few of the other volunteers from that summer, and so far, nobody has called me out on my National Siblings Day posts despite the fact that I only have one brother. I don't even remember the stories I made up. Probably just stories about being pranked by someone the night before. I think what started it was when a few were sharing wild stories about their childhood, and I retold stories that happened to friends but said, "My little brother did this," instead of, "My friend's little brother did this." I still cringe when I remember making up stories and lying about having many wild siblings. I really didn't think it through. Story 12. Many years ago, a girl was interested in me, but I was not interested in her. She was not the type to take no for an answer, so I made up a girlfriend. This did not go as planned. She wanted to show interest in my life to eventually turn it into something more, so she asked questions about my made-up girlfriend. This lasted for over 3 hours, during which I gave my made-up girlfriend a life, what she looked like, what she liked, where she went to school, and much more. Finally, we finished talking, and as I was getting into my car to drive home, I started wondering what my non-existent girlfriend was doing at that moment and why she had not called in a while. I briefly convinced myself that she was real. Story 13. One day after kindergarten, My mom noticed my belly looked red and asked me why with concern. Being 5 years old, I wanted to avoid the questioning because of her worried tone. So I made up the first plausible explanation that came to mind. I don't know, maybe I ran into a passing kid's hand or arm at the bottom of the slide or something. She asked who, so being at a kindergarten through 6th grade school, I said, I don't know, maybe a 6th grader. I had no idea what the truth was. Could have been anything from nothing to someone slapping my belly to make funny noises. Unaware of this, my mom became very worried, thinking I was bullied, and called the school. Later that week, I was pulled from class by an administrator and taken to the 6th grade classroom to identify the kid. Realizing I was in too deep, I just went along with it. When we arrived, I pointed at the first boy that caught my attention. A boy with bleached hair tips. He was pulled from class and taken to the office, and I was returned to my class. He never bullied me again. In fact, he probably never did in the first place. Years later, my mom mentioned it again, and I learned that the boy I pointed at was actually the principal's son. I have no idea what happened to him afterwards, but it probably was not good. Sorry, dude. Story 14. I have my card for the bus. Well, I did not have the card, and I did not have money for the Uber. While I was writing to someone to bring me help, someone stole my phone. When my parents saw that my location was far from my normal route, they became scared and called the police. I arrived at my house with a patrol car in front of it. Story 15. When I was 11, I pretended my kid's squad card, a membership card for discounts on children's activities, was a credit card because it had a strip on the back. I had my wallet full of random fake cards and Monopoly money too because I was a kid. We went on group outings to the mall sometimes, and the girls would be begging me to buy random things. There was one girl in particular who saw my kid's squad card and immediately spun around to a display rack, pointing to the first item on the wall before she even looked at it. She said, "Buy for me, buy for me." She didn't even know what that thing was. She had never spoken to me in class, and we weren't friends. Then she ran to another display rack and picked up about 5 items randomly, and the other girls followed. They were going crazy picking up several $50 bags and even shoes that were too big for them. They just wanted me to buy. They were suddenly so nice to me and clinging to my shoulders. It was disgusting to watch. The rest of the girls didn't even ask. They just picked up a bunch of items and expected me to pay. I didn't know how to explain that it was not a credit card. I kind of just said sorry, my mom tells me to save, and slowly walked out of the shop until the girls eventually dropped everything on the floor to come out. The same thing repeated at every shop we passed, and when they didn't get what they wanted, they looked at me with so much disgust and hate. Years later, I realized one of the cards in my wallet was an actual childhood savings account for emergencies, and I'm glad I didn't know it was there. Otherwise, I would have caved into kids who didn't even like me. Story 16. Not mine but got involved. My cousin once had the bright idea to borrow money from a loan shark we knew from work. He then went on a binge and pretty much spent all the money. He told me he needed the money to send to his mother, who was diagnosed with cancer and needed medical exams. When the lender came looking for his money, I corroborated the reason, so he gave him an extension on his payment. The following month, my cousin did not show up at work. He did not answer my calls, and the rumor was that his mother had died. I did not know about any of this, and, fearing he had done something stupid, I went to his place. It turned out he was hiding and had told the lender that he was going home because his mother died. He got another extension out of pity, and the rumor spread through everyone at work. Come next Monday, everyone had chipped in and raised money for his loss. I felt bad but could not say anything, so I thanked everyone and made him pay the lender with that money. Story 17. In 8th grade, our physical education teacher was trying to develop athletes for the high school football team. We all received a Costco jug of protein powder and were strongly encouraged to drink protein shakes. Fast forward 2 summers later, when my mom got me a job cleaning condominiums with her. It was grueling work. We cleaned about 7 units from 6 a.m. to noon. Each week, she told me how much money we made, but at the end of the month, she paid me only a fraction of what we earned. I drove 2 hours each way every day in my car. While cleaning the kitchen, I found my old protein bucket. Oddly enough, it looked a lot like the Slim Fast my mom was taking to lose weight and find a partner. I poured out half of the Slim Fast, added the protein powder, mixed it up, and continued with my day. She asked me almost every week if she looked like she was losing weight. She wasn't. Story 18. I told my mom that I ate her leftovers by accident. She made the same meal for me every day for a week because she thought I loved it. I hate lasagna. Story 19. I am okay. I was not. I was very terribly, horrifically not okay, and it spiraled out of control for over 3 decades. I am better now, but it is still a lie I tell daily, multiple times a day, because I respect social constructs. Story 20. I lost everything, which amounted to trash really, in a flood. I told a coworker I lost everything, and he bought me a new PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 4 virtual reality. I immediately told him to return them since I had insurance and basically got a free renovation. Story 21. For a long time, I told people that I was okay. Narrator, I was, in fact, not okay. Over the years, I developed coping mechanisms to mask what I was going through until they all came crashing down at the same time, and I spiraled into a very unhealthy place. When my friends found out, they said, I know something was wrong, but you were always so upbeat and affable. So I thought it was just me reading it wrong. Life lesson. It's okay to let your friends know when you are struggling. They will either be there to support you or they are probably not the friends you think they are. You do not have to struggle alone. Story 22. This was meant to be an absurd and easily disproven lie. I do not even remember the circumstances as to why, but my brother and I told our younger brother he was adopted. Kids are not very smart. I think we were all between 10 and 12 years old. There were newborn photos of him in our mother's arms. She had kept our hospital bands as keepsakes. It was not until we were all in our late 20s that he finally asked me if it was true. I still feel bad about it. Story 23. When I was 11, I told my parents that a girl in my class was bullying me, even though she was not, because they pressured me into admitting it, although it never happened. My dad later told the girl's father that he would beat him up for bullying me in the group chat of my class's parents. The girl ended up grounded. Most of the class was on her side, with a few remaining neutral. Both my parents and the girl's parents got the police involved. My parents talked to our neighbor, who was a police officer, to investigate the girl's father. It turned out that he was very strong and a professional hunter, so naturally my dad got nervous, as he was overweight and would likely be easily defeated if the man acted aggressively. The girl's mother went to the police station to warn them that if anything happened to any of them, my father would be responsible. Eventually, I had to tell my parents the truth, that she was not bullying me. The rest is somewhat unclear. The girl basically never talked to me again, at least not in person, and without any arguments. Fortunately, everyone forgot about it about 3 months later, and it was never discussed again. I managed to restore the small part of my reputation that remained and formed a new identity, one that does not break easily under pressure and consequently never reveals its true feelings. I am fine, by the way. Story 24. I convinced another child that my name was something else. A week or two later, I watched him argue with my friend about what my name was, and it was hilarious. It is all cleared up now. We are friends, and he sometimes calls me by the fake name for fun. Story 25. My great-great-grandfather invented the marching band. Story 26. A couple of years ago, I told my boss I was great with Microsoft Excel just to get the job. Now I am the Microsoft Excel guy. It has been 3 years of hell. Story 27. Age 14. New town, new school. Got a perm because that was the thing. Wanted ringlets, got a beehive. Mom paid too much for the perm, so no, I couldn't wash it out. Went to school on Monday, and when I started getting teased, I broke out an Irish lilt and made everyone believe I was my cousin from Dublin. I even covered up a small birthmark on my hand. I stepped it up a notch and pushed back on my bully as my cousin. I ended up in the vice principal's office. I didn't say a word in class, knowing teachers would expose me. So I sat there with my bully while the vice principal got her side of the story. I was about to pee myself, knowing the gig was up the minute he heard my side. Then he excused her, and only after she left did he get my side. I thought for sure I was going to get in trouble. I kept that under my hair for ages. Story 28. When I dropped out of college at 18, I was still living with my parents. This lie took a lot of effort to maintain. I just didn't want to get kicked out, but I did when she found out. I just wasn't ready for it. Story 29. It wasn't me who lied, but an ex-friend that I refused to talk to even to this day. We were in senior high school. She had a boyfriend who was already graduating as a teacher. All throughout the year she kept telling us about this guy, but we never saw him. At one point I thought she was just imagining him, but it turns out he was real. The disturbing part is, when we found out he was actually real, she became weird. She started saying that they kept going on fights about small things. Then she joked about watching him sleep when he came over and that she wanted to turn the iron on and slam its hot surface on his face. At the time, we had a subject in biology where we had to dissect a heart and a frog. She joked about thinking of dissecting the guy while he was asleep. The actual lie started small. I guess their fights became worse because she wanted out of the relationship. She used our names to pretend as if we were texting the guy and telling him off. I was angry because she didn't even tell us what was going on. She told us she was doing this after sending hundreds of texts using my name, which made it look as if we were together. I told her to stop right there, and then, when she sensed that we no longer wanted anything to do with her, she started spreading rumors that she was being beaten by the boyfriend. There were no visible bruises, so it was uncertain. But then one night she called my friend. She wanted to call me first, but my SIM card broke a few days prior, and told her that the boyfriend had made her drink some chemical and that she had vomited severely. The friend sent me the pictures, and I called our teacher, who told us to inform her if the girl did something strange. The teacher immediately checked up on her. A few minutes later, the teacher called me and told me not to worry anymore and to stay far from that troubled girl from that day on. She was lying, the teacher said. The teacher called her phone and they talked. If she was really poisoned, she wouldn't have been able to talk on the phone for so long. I started ignoring her from that day. My friend did too, but she was nicer than me. She still kept advising her to stop. But of course, she didn't. She immediately sensed she couldn't use us anymore, so she went to the popular students and the faculty. Imagine our surprise when a public Facebook post with all the faculty tagged was posted one Sunday morning. It had a long message saying that the boyfriend was a manipulator and a woman beater, saying that he hit her with a beam of wood and repeated the poison story. She also emphasized his upcoming graduation and him becoming a teacher. Of course, the faculty were all sympathizing with her except for our advisor. We asked her about the post, and all she said was that she hadn't seen it, but the entire faculty was on her about it. The days that followed were very strange. She still tried to act as if everything was normal. I avoided any conversations with her and sometimes went alone anywhere just to avoid her. The post was soon deleted, and I never really heard anything about it again. Of course, she was lying again. When we were about to graduate senior high school, she disappeared. I wanted to reach out to the guy, but I knew the girl had his account because she kept talking about it before. She came back in my second year of college as a freshman, but because of lockdown, we didn't really get to see each other until the fourth year when face-to-face classes resumed. She always tried to greet me as if she hadn't ruined my last year of high school. I just smiled at her, but that was it. I didn't even try to engage her back with a hello. Story 30. For a laugh, I put some rose petals on the edge of the cream cheese sandwich my mother made for me for school, and I said my mother always did it. From then on, people used to bring me roses and I had to eat them. Story 31. I started a rumor at work. I was just joking when I said that the new boss, who was rather young for his position, was the owner's grandson. I told one person and it spread quickly. I heard the guy talking to one of the shift leaders saying, "Who is saying this?" I was laughing so hard I was crying. Story 32. I always lie, so I don't know what to pick up. This is not a proud boast, just the truth. I sometimes wonder how much money my parents spent on pencils and pens because I was so anxious to pick them up. But I didn't. I used to see them on the floor, but I thought everyone would stare at me if I tried to take them again. I always told my parents that I lent the pens and pencils to someone whose face I did not remember. and I couldn't ask them after class. I wonder how many dollars my parents wasted on pencils and pens. Story 33. I had been to the bottom of an ocean trench. Kids kept asking me for details about anything I might have seen where I went down and so on. I didn't expect these questions, so I pointed to a place on the map and kept making up stories. Funny enough, even the teacher believed me and asked some questions. He was a big fan of deep-sea exploration. I became the school's deep-sea guy for the rest of the year. My teacher even mentioned it at a parent-teacher association meeting, and my mom misunderstood and said, "Yeah, he's a huge ocean guy. I like to indulge him," or something like that. Fun fact, some of what I said was right. I claimed I had found a giant boat down there. About 15 years later, an old World War II shipwreck was found only a few miles from where I had pointed. Story 34. Don't worry, I got a vasectomy. Tens of thousands of dollars of child support later, here we are. Story 35. I cannot lie. I have never had anything spiral out of control. I have stretched the truth before. I have withheld information that would hurt someone. It depends on the situation. Story 36. I told a date I was 6 feet tall, but I am actually 5 feet 10 inches. She wore flats for months, thinking she was too tall for me. Awkward. Story 37. When I was a virgin, I lied to a guy I really liked, saying that I was not a virgin and had experience. He then told me he wanted to see how good I was. I ended up having sex with him and became addicted to sex. For a while, I behaved promiscuously, sleeping with many guys. Seeking male approval can take you further than you ever intended. Story 38. I brought a dish to a family dinner, but instead of saying I bought it, I said I made it from scratch. They found out I lied, and now they video call me whenever it's time to make food for our gatherings to make sure I'm actually cooking. My family isn't big on takeout or fast food. Story 39. I did not lie, but my ex-boyfriend wrote on Reddit that he was married to his previous ex. He kept referring to her as his wife and said he was married, but he was not. He also wrote that he was bisexual while he had told me multiple times that he was straight. I did not confront him about this because after the marriage lie, it seemed just pathetic. He lied to make himself look cool on Reddit. I found out, and now I am also his ex. He probably thought it was a small lie. Story 40. So not exactly a lie, but an exaggeration. I told my boss that I was quitting for health reasons, partial truth, because I was getting sick too often. It was also the commute, and I really started to dislike my coworkers and job, but I heavily insinuated my poor health was the major reason. To be fair, I was sick almost constantly for 3 months straight. My boss would not let it go and told everyone. Suddenly, the story was that I had an autoimmune problem, needed my bone marrow checked, couldn't be around people, had to do immunotherapy, and was leaving the profession. I never said any of this, but as I was applying to other jobs, my coworkers started pushing and acting shady, like I lied to them when they found out. Yes, Karen, I'm sick of your nonsense. I was like, I never said I had immune problems or any of that, just that I wanted to work less and closer to home because I was getting sick a lot. Story 41. After college, I moved to a large city for my first full-time job. I had spent all my savings on the move and the security deposit for my new apartment, so I was on a very tight budget. During my first week, my team told me about a Wednesday donut tradition where they take turns bringing donuts. They asked if I would be willing to bring them the following week. I knew I couldn't afford that until my first paycheck, so I apologized and said I didn't like donuts and would prefer not to participate. I really love donuts. I was on that team for 2 years and never ate any because I was embarrassed to admit I lied about it. Story 42. I am late because I hit someone with my car on the way here. Unfortunately, they died. Story 43. I lied about noises my roommate's girlfriend made during sex. Story 44. I'm racist. Well, guess what? I got influenced by my cousin. Now I make a Chinese accent once in a while because of him, even though I'm Asian too. Story 45. I said I was from New Jersey when I am actually from Arizona. It was a mistake at first, but then my ex's entire family believed I was from New Jersey and kept saying, Italian East Coast girl, or asking, "You're from New Jersey, right?" My entire family on my mother's side is from New Jersey, so I use that as a fact about myself because I dislike being from Arizona. Story 46. When I was younger, my cousin always took me everywhere, and since she was 5 years older, it made my teenage years a lot more thrilling. I met a lot of her friends, went to parties, knew older people, and generally felt cooler than kids my age. When I was 13, I was at her house when her friend called. She was a senior in high school, and I was in my last year of middle school. She put me on the phone to just chat with her friend, but told him I was also a senior in high school. So I had to fake it, and somehow he believed it. He was funny and smart, and since I was over at her house often, it kind of became a regular thing. He asked my cousin to let him know when I was visiting so he would know to call, and that led to him asking if he could see a picture of me. In her panic, she couldn't show a real picture of me. She said she didn't have one, that I hated having my picture taken, so she drew him a picture. My cousin never told him the truth, and I was too young and lacked the maturity to put a stop to it. She eventually gave him my number, and he was calling every day. This went on for months, and for some reason or another, us meeting never worked out. When we were in the final half of the school year, he asked me to his prom. I felt terrible. I have to say, he was never inappropriate with me. He would make me laugh, and he was a really decent guy. I can't remember exactly how I got out of it, and he did find someone else to go to prom with him. My cousin never told him the truth. For all he knows, this girl who became a pretty good friend left to go to college out of state. I am almost 50, and I still remember that with guilt. Story 47. My grandmother came to visit me, and I happened to be wearing a Dr. Pepper branded t-shirt. The text on the front of the shirt said, "I'm a pepper." My grandmother asked why my shirt said that I was a pepper. I told her it was because I liked bell peppers. She now thinks I love bell peppers, and guess what I get for gifts? Bell peppers. Story 48. I lied to a friend about my age. He later became my boyfriend, but the lie had been snowballing. It was a 2-year age difference. I was 12 and he was 14 by the end of our relationship, and we had been together for 2 years. I loved him deeply. I worshipped my sweet boy. I adored him, and I lost him because that lie turned into him believing I had lied about my name, age, and what had happened between me and other people since so many gaps were missing. He later died. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.